Hello and welcome to another episode of Metal Effort. My name's Nehemiah, and today we're going to be checking out this piece of metal, the Spyderco Ikuchi. I think that's how you say it. Ikuchi is a Japanese sea monster, I guess, which is interesting. Not really. This is on loan from a viewer of mine. His name's Sean on Instagram. He's SF Knife Guy, so give him a follow. Thank you, Sean, for passing this along. Let's get into our size comparisons. We've got our old trusty PM2 and Para 3. This is a really interestingly shaped knife. Very compact, for sure. Cutting length is actually longer than both of these knives, but the overall size and shape and weight of the knife is much smaller than either of the two bigger Spydercos. There's another interesting size comparison I want to do. I'm going to pull this into the discussion later. It's the CRKT LCK light compact knife. That's right, got that. And then we got our little Spyderco Dragonfly. So comparing just some very small in the pocket lightweight knives here, just to give you an idea of where the Ikuchi kind of fits in. Let's get a quick weigh-in. We're looking at 2.37 ounces. We'll call it a 2.4. With all the objective stuff out of the way, let's get into the subjective in our dent, the decent, the excellent, the nitpicks, and the terrible of this piece of metal. First off in the decent is this blade shape. This blade shape is pretty useful. It's very long. You can get some slices done in the lunchroom. You can get into, boxes and packaging and tape pretty easily. A lot of stabbing power. It's kind of a Persian shape, upswept tip. So it's got a lot of practicality in just whatever kind of cutting you're looking to do in most cases. Obviously not meant for like hard use. It's pretty thin blade stock. The washers on this knife are tiny, so I wouldn't do a lot of twisting or contorting with it. Not really meant for that. It's just kind of a lightweight EDC. But the blade really kind of covers your bases in all those types of tasks. When you compare it to other smaller knives that have like shorter, stubbier blades, something like a Pilar or a Busker or a Techno 2, something along those lines, it's much taller but shorter. And so sometimes it's going to make a very seemingly easy task kind of difficult. If you're trying to cut through like a tomato or something, this could pull it off just because it's just long enough to get through those types of things, where cutting a tomato with a Techno might not be the best experience. Probably get the job done. You just have to like circle around it, but you get the point. The shape of the blade is useful. I really like the branding on the blade. You've got the Spider here, Spyderco, and then the CPM S35EN kind of tucked up out of the way. I really like it when it's up in this area, just somewhere that's out of the cutting path. I don't like the resistance that the laser etch has on the knife. I know that's a nitpick, but just having it out of the way, I really appreciate. Either clean or just move it somewhere smart. If you put all this stuff, Taichung, Taiwan, and the Maker's Mark, the collab, all on the blade, I would really be annoyed by that. It wouldn't be like the end of any world, but it'd be frustrating. So good job in trying to like be creative and putting it in a different spot. The ergonomics on the knife are pretty good. It's not super, form-fitting in the sense that like you don't have like a finger, groove here. You don't have like any contoured, scales or anything like that. They're pretty much flat as flat could be. Obviously, the edges aren't very sharp at all, but all in all, no hot spots. The clip is great. It's the old, wire clip, so it's staying out of the way in terms of ergonomics go. It's kind of packing in right where it should be as far as in the hand. Even if I bear down, it's not an issue. So it's definitely not like winning any ergonomic awards, but there's no clear issues like there was with, say, a Booz Hound, where the blockiness of the pivot area was just too much for me to give it a pass on. The carbon fiber peel ply is done really well. No imperfections here. Gives it a very warm, natural feel, almost like micarta. Not quite as squishy. Some people have a problem with carbon peel ply. I don't. I think it's a good budget alternative to just straight up normal carbon fiber. This does the job as far as the texture goes and the look of it. It's a little bit Cosby sweater, but it doesn't have any colors baked in like they used to do on the Dominoes. So I think it's fine. I'm totally pleased by it. And this is kind of a spiteful, decent note. There's no lanyard hole on this, unless you want to call this like a faux lanyard hole. That'd be hilarious. It's like, oh yeah, the lanyard hole's right here, and then they just can't like open their knife at all because the hole lines up right there. So maybe I'm not the only one that's spiting the lanyard hole here. Last decent thing is just how easy and quick it is to take this knife apart. I was in there in like 2 minutes, like done the whole thing. Took the knife apart, cleaned it out, slapped it back together, and very quick and easy. Everything is very small, normal. These are 6 hex bit. These are 8. So just two switches on the hex screws, Torx, whatever you want to call them. Easy peasy. Now let's get into the excellent. I have 3 excellent things to talk about. First one is this clip. When you think about it, the wire clip from Spyderco, the deep carry one like this, is probably their best clip. And it's so simple. It's probably pretty cheap to do, I would imagine. But this is just so good. No hot spots. There's plenty of, spring to it. It's easy to get in and out of your pocket. Easily reversible. This is just a really solid clip. So aside from the fact that it looks a little cheap, I think this is, anytime it's going to show up on a Spyderco knife, I'm just going to stick in the excellent. I want to send a message. Just say, keep using this clip. Find a way to put this on every knife as a default instead of the spoon clip. Spoon clips are okay, but I think if you made the wire clip your default and then experimented with, higher end knives on having a custom clip on other stuff, I still think I would rather have a wire clip than this custom clip on the Drunken. So that's really saying something in terms of just how much I like it, even though it is probably cheap. Next excellent point is the shape and size of this knife. This is a really, really clean design. So when the blade is closed, it is perfectly recessed into the scales of the handle. The arc to it is exactly the same. You can see those holes line up perfectly here. So not only does the knife not have any hump or anything going on here, but the whole thing tapers right to the point where you have that deep carry clip. So it's like hardly anything sticking out of your pocket. Very, very lightweight. I put this in my pocket, went to the post office, came back, and I was like, man, I gotta record the review. Where's the knife? I can't find the knife. I was looking around for like 10 minutes. The whole time it was in my pocket, and I didn't realize. So that's a testament to just how easy it is to carry this sucker. You're gonna forget you have it. And I think that's really the biggest draw to this knife, is it's just so incredibly thin, lightweight, and no artifacts hanging off as far as it being in your pocket. No flipper tab. There's a little bit of jimping here, so maybe I wouldn't put it in the same pocket as like an iPhone without a screen protector or something like that. But aside from this, even then, it's just at the bottom. It's probably not going to be touching anything. This is really, really good. I put it on par in terms of just size and like carryability as like a chamois, maybe even better than the chamois in just terms of size, and not sacrificing that much in blade length. I'm getting 3 1/4 of cutting length out of this extremely thin profile. So the blade to body ratio, the blade to weight ratio, this is probably the best of any Spyderco I've seen. So we gotta tip our hats to that aspect of the knife. Last excellent point is the value. This is $130 for this knife. I think it's a pretty fair price. You're getting S35 or S30V, I should say. You're getting the peel ply. You're getting the wire clip that they are pretty stingy on putting on things. I think it's no mistake that like my favorite Spydercos tend to have that clip. It's so good. So, what's this cost? $130. That's a really, really reasonable cost for such, very specifically designed knife that is filling something that, I think any of us can use. Like just having something this thin and lightweight in your pocket where normally maybe you wouldn't carry a pocket because you're worried about it. If you got like board shorts on or something and it's maybe awkward to carry like a normal mid-sized knife, you could throw this on there and probably wouldn't be an issue. All right, let's get into some nitpicks. This particular model is a little off center, and Sean took it apart, tried to get that fixed. He couldn't. I took it apart, tried to get that fixed. I couldn't. And upon really looking at it, I think it's going to be very hard for these to be centered on a regular basis. I only have this one knife to look at, so, you know, comment in the section down below. If you have the Ikuchi, tell us what your centering's like. Just get more data out there so people can see, you know, if it's a little bit off center like this, you know, most people aren't going to, you know, raise the roof on that too much, but, you know, is this an outlier or is this something that you know, is happening all the time? The reason I think it might be happening more than average, those washers are just so incredibly thin. So when you have very thin washers and the blade's sticking out, it's going to want to move, you know, horizontally, perpendicular to the blade, I should say, because there's not as much, you know, material keeping it from, you know, twisting and bending on that pivot. And so the problem is on this compression lock, the detent ball is pushing on the blade this way. So if my theory is correct, that little bit of pressure from the detent ball, the lock bar pushing on the blade should be favoring the clip side. So if people that don't have a centered blade, I'm guessing more times than not, it's going to be favoring the clip side. Normally, a knife would favor the presentation side if you have like a normal liner lock, but that's flipped if you have the compression lock. And sure enough, we look at this particular model and it is favoring that wire clip side. Could just be anecdotal evidence, that's why I'm asking for some input from you guys, but that's my theory. We'll see how it plays out. All right, let's get into the action. I have not talked about the action on this knife yet, and we're past the good and excellent, so that could be bad news. The problem is I'm doing action, the three aspects of action all together. I've been doing that lately just to kind of keep it in one spot so you're not jumping around the video trying to find, you know, what the action's like. So we've got open, we've got disengage, and we've got close. Open by itself maybe could have made it into the decent. At first I had put the whole thing in the decent and was just going to mention, hey, some of these things are less than decent. But if two of the three are not decent, I'm going to put it in the nitpicks and then just let you decide for yourself. Let's go through the whole process. So on the open, you've got this very unique kind of lighter, Zippo lighter type half wheel, not even half wheel, but the idea being that you can either use your finger, if you're quick enough, you could totally do it. The detent, I don't want to say is weak. It's not like the blade can fall out or anything like that, but just, I think the geometry of it, you have to be kind of speedy. If you try to slow roll it, you know, with built up tension, it's just, and then you run out of, you know, I can't slow roll it all the way open because I'm out of traction. So I need to actually build up that tension with a little bit more speed to break the detent and actually get it all the way out. The thumb is a lot easier to do, kind of a quicker, lighter type action. It's almost like a front flipper or a top flipper obviously more, where you kind of get that same, you're pinching the knife kind of back here, you're hanging on to it, making sure that your fingers are out of the way down here, and then you're holding the blade in a very awkward way, and then you, oops, gotta lift it up, not hit the camera, let's see, boom. All right, so that's more comfortable to do when you're not behind a camera. Then the finger one is an issue because it doesn't reliably open every time, and it just rubs your finger raw. You can kind of see some of the damage on my finger here. And I talked to Sean about it a bit on Instagram, and he was saying the same thing. He can do it, but if you fidget with it, it's just, yeah, it's, you can see just in those two instances, I've marked it up even more. So the open is good. It's going to take some some practice to open it with the thumb, grip it in kind of the awkward way so you're not actually putting your finger over the blade, which is an issue. Disengage, 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 disengage. Now, this is going to bring me back to the old Capara review. Now, compression locks on tiny knives have this problem, and I'm going to keep talking about it, and it's still a problem, even though we had this like raging conversation, wasn't an argument, in the compression lock issue on the Kapara. So the problem is you have very little space between the little tiny cutout they have and that lock bar, right? And so you're supposed to pinch it with your finger and then drop the blade shut. And on a PM2 or Pair 3 or whatever, a normal compression lock, that's exactly how you want to do it. You could do your index finger if you wanted. I tend to do my middle finger on the bigger knives, just feels more comfortable for me. But whatever you want to do, that's not a problem. That's how I use the knife normally. I never on a PM2 use my thumb like this. That's kind of weird. But I was doing it with the Kapara because doing it with my finger was just downright painful, and it wasn't painful with my thumb. A lot of people didn't get that. Same thing here. On this knife, if I'm fidgeting with the knife, I'm trying to, figure out exactly how I feel about this thing. I'm going to be opening it and closing it a lot of times to really get a beat for it. And doing it the traditional way, where I'm using my index finger or my middle finger, I can pinch it in. It hurts. It hurts a lot. I don't want to do that. If you're doing it one time, if you're just using the knife, it's not an issue. So this really depends. Do you want to buy a knife like this purely for the use of the knife? This is probably not going to bother you because you're only going to use it once or twice a day. Pinching this with your finger is not a big deal. It's not something to worry about. Now, if you're a fidgeter like I am, this is going to be pretty annoying because this is the way to kind of use the knife one-handed. Now, I can do it one-handed, but I'm kind of like flipping the knife to get the blade to come down. It's a very lightweight blade. And interestingly, there is you can see it here, a detent ball ramp. And I can only imagine how bad this would be if they didn't have the detent ball ramp. Because when I pinch that, it's pretty smooth transition to get the ball onto the tang of the blade. You can see it happening right there. It's just the blade is so light, you have no gravity, to work with here, no leverage to actually pull that blade past it. So that means I need to nudge the blade to get it started and then kind of flip it shut. This is different than bigger knives. Even the Pair 3, which is a smaller knife, gravity can shut the blade on its own. You are not going to be able to do that with this knife. If you make it loose enough to do that, you're going to have horrendous blade play. I don't think it's possible to get that perfectly done. I don't think like this knife is a lemon. It's great action. It's smooth and it gets onto the tang of the blade really, really nicely. It's just super lightweight blade. So what does this mean for the disengage? It means you're doing some finger gymnastics if you're gonna close it a lot of times and not hurt yourself. So I've been doing this thing where I close it with my thumb and then push it with my finger to get it started and then close that way. Because if I'm fidgeting, if I'm doing something else with my other hand, I want to be able to go through the whole gauntlet on my own. And doing it with the finger is like incredibly awkward and I'm going to drop the knife. Doing it with my thumb, I can curl over and get that closed. Now, before I move on to the close part, I want to bring up this very important thing. And I think a lot of people, if you asked them, would probably say that compression lock is strictly better than a liner lock. And I am here to say, not that I think the liner lock is strictly better than the compression lock. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying there are times where a liner lock is actually better than a compression lock. And this is one of those times. And I think it's the same thing, the same point I made on the Kapara. The reason being is if you have a very thin, tiny blade, like this is, if it has good action and you get onto the tang of the blade, you can wiggle it shut. It's getting the blade on the tang of the blade and getting it like, a quarter of the way there, and then you can kind of let your force of wiggling it shut continue through. Now, if I have a liner lock, I can do this very easily one-handed. This has a flipper tab, so I can catch it. But even if I didn't have a flipper tab, I can still, push the blade, let's say like that, and then continue shut really easily. And my thumb is the one that's making contact with the liner lock, not my finger. Doing your finger is just a whole nother ball game to your thumb. you don't have near as much skin, you don't have near as much like area to kind of distribute the pressure of having to close that bar. And it's being concentrated on the tip of your finger, usually on a compression lock, especially the small ones, like on the Ikuchi and the Kapara. So I'm taking, similar amounts of pressure being, targeted at one point instead of spread vertically along, or horizontally, depending on how you're orientated. But along the distance of my thumb, I get to use at least half my thumb pad to split that up and then move it over with a lot of leverage. But with my finger, I'm pinching, and it's just jabbing you right in the same spot over and over and over and over. So I think with very thin, small knives like this, I think the liner lock is probably the better way to go. Because I don't know physically how you make enough room for us to get in there with our pointer finger and not have other issues. It'd be really naive of me to just say, well, just cut this out more. Well, it's like, okay, but then you have your whole hunkin', index finger in there, and then the blade does come shut and just chops you up, right? It's designed so I can't cut myself when the blade is closed. And so, sure, if you're like really, really used to knives, then I would rather have that knife, but I would be careful not to leave my finger there like an idiot and get it chopped off every time. So that's kind of the trade-off, is that you don't easily get to depress that lock bar. I think something like the Spyderco Smock is a way that you can maybe solve that problem, but then you have a lot more mechanisms that are up here that you then have to make room for with a giant like sharpening choil on the blade. That's kind of why the blade looks so weird on the Smock. So there's definitely some design problems to solve, and I think for the time being, you just make a liner lock. It works great. I know you want to be new and different, but this works. This works, I should say. And just do it. I think it would make the knife strictly better in this knife's case. Next nitpick, there's some jimping down here. I don't know why. So this is less of just, I think this is strictly bad. It's just more, why is it here? I feel like when I'm holding the knife, I'll do it left-handed because I have a Band-Aid, but I don't know how much traction this actually gives me. Like, I could imagine them saying, so you don't slip forward onto the blade, but you already have the little jimping right here from the opener, the flipper, for lack of a better word. I don't think you need this as well. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of hot spotty if you move it in the wrong way, and it just seems unnecessary to me to have that there. But maybe there's a good reason for it, so please enlighten me if you know what it is. And this is a nitpick I really don't think is fair at all, but okay, stick with me on this one. So this is the Ikuchi, right? It's a Japanese sea monster, which means it'd be in the ocean. Wouldn't it be cool if this had LC200N? Have like a little pocket steak knife with you. I don't think you would have to make the entire thing seaworthy. I mean, that'd be cool if you did, but obviously that'd make the cost go way up. But I'd be willing to pay $180 for this if it had LC200N. I think that would really be good. Again, this is not a knock on S30V. It's fine. It'd be okay to use with food. Minor nitpick. I could basically say in every review that if it doesn't have LC200N, it should, unless it's like Man X37 or something. There's nothing for the terrible. I was kind of tempting of being really controversial and just put compression lock in the terrible. But I think you get my point, that it's something that it works. It does the job. You have to kind of have your own way to like use the knife if you're going to fidget with it. I don't think everybody, is going to be fidgeting the knives. Fidgeting the knives? That sounds naughty. Don't fidget the knives. Fidgeting with the knives as much as I am. I'm a reviewer. Not only would I fidget with knives, God. Anyway, but I'm especially going to do it, in very concentrated batches to get a knife review out in time. So I think I'm realizing I'm not the majority in with how much I fidget with knives. This is not a metaphor, guys. I'm being literal. We all fidget with our knives when we're alone. So let's talk about the conclusion. Who do I recommend this to? I think I can recommend it to a majority of people that are in the knife hobby. I think it's a good little, EDC, lightweight. I don't know if I want to call it a gentleman's folder. I've been kind of avoiding saying that because it looks a little stabby for that kind of thing. But, if you can kind of get, people's opinion in the office, you're like, hey, does this look scary to you? And if they freak out, then you know not to bring it again. But other than that, possibility, I think this is a great knife to just have on you at all times. It's not going to take up too much space or weigh you down. It's not going to be hanging out of your pocket. For EDC, I think this is really, really, really good. I'm interested to see if they do more steels. Like I said, I'd be interested in LC200N. It'd be kind of cool to have like a nicer version, like a souped up version of this, like just go full carbon fiber or something. Maybe steel on one side or titanium on one side and then carbon fiber on the other. That'd be kind of dope. Kind of like the Domino. All right, everybody, I hope this was helpful to you. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye. Domino have like a Domino revival, the spirit of Cosby going into this knife. I bet he fidgets with knives.